Meet the Candidate Series. The ARC of Pennsylvania hosts an interview with Jill Dennin, candidate for Montgomery County's 147th House District, by Bill Krebs, self-advocate with the ARC Alliance. The Meet the Candidate Series is an opportunity for individuals with disabilities and their families to hear from candidates on disability issues. Candidates from all parties have been invited to participate in the series. The ARC of Pennsylvania is a nonpartisan organization and does not endorse political candidates.
Hello and welcome to the ARC of Pennsylvania's next Meet the Candidate series. Today we have Jill Dennin, and she is the Democrat candidate for Pennsylvania's 147th House District covering Montgomery County. She is running for the seat held by retiring Representative Marcy Topol. Jill is a dedicated community advocate. She has experience in federal and state relations, nonprofit sector, as a substitute teacher and a member of the Boyertown Area School District Board. Some of Jill's key platforms are property tax relief, improved charter and cyber school expenses and accountability, fair funding for education, and improving community infrastructure. So welcome, Jill. We are glad to have you here today. With us today, we have Pat Leo from the ARC Alliance and Bill Krebs. And I'm going to turn it over to Pat to introduce Bill.
Bill Krebs was diagnosed with an intellectual disability in the 5th grade. And at that time, he was segregated into special ed classrooms. And then after school, he went to segregated workshops. And it was at that time that he started to be able to advocate for himself. Today, Bill is 57 years old. He lives independently in his own apartment. He works for Keystone Human Services. He runs supports groups for them, for individuals with autism and developmental disabilities. He does community outreach, and he is also on several committees locally and statewide. Bill?
Thank you, Pat. Jill, I have these questions I want to ask you, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Okay, my first question is, what do you think Pennsylvania should assist families and caregivers with people with disabilities?
So thanks, Bill. And I definitely have some opinions about that. One of the first things that we should do in Pennsylvania is we should streamline our services so we can work with families and coordinate care in an efficient and cost-effective manner. I think one of the problems is that there are plenty of great agencies, but I think we need to do a little better job of coordinating that care and making sure that we connect our clients and our people who have disabilities, whether that be intellectual or physical, with the proper agencies and the proper people to help. So I think that's one. And the second thing I think we need to do is that we need to look at our health insurance coverage, and we need to make it easier for caregivers and families to be reimbursed and to afford care especially when our families are dealing with children who then become adults.
Okay, next question I wrote down, it said, what investment will you make to expand long-term services and support communities for people with disabilities?
So one of the things that I have seen is that I think we need to absolutely increase investments in educational services. I think that every school should have a classroom that prepares students for life after high school and after education. I think we need to increase those investments. We also need to increase our investments in community health centers. Just like Bill, you've had the opportunity to work and live independently. The goal should be, once children become adults and our students become adults, that they have every opportunity to live independently and go into the workforce. and not just be written off as, oh, you know, they're autistic or they're intellectually disabled and they can't contribute to our society. Every single person I know with a disability is able to contribute in a very valuable way to our society. And I think that we need to increase those investments to give opportunities to people. I think we also need to have an increase in group homes for those people who can't quite live on their own, and to make daily life easier for individuals with disabilities. I also think that there's many healthcare reforms that are necessary across the board. I want to see the system more accessible, make it work for people in our community, and work with organizations to do that.
Okay. How would you work against the needless institution for individuals with intellectual disabilities and developmental disabilities?
Quite simply, I would slowly do away with the institutionalization system. I think it's an outdated system, and I think that we need, like I said earlier, to make investments in helping our adults live individually, whether it be in group homes or giving them the life skills necessary to live on their own. But I think we need to slowly do away with the institutional system, and do that in a variety of ways. One of them is supporting home care.
Okay. How would you work with this to the shortness of direct care workers?
Well, as someone who was working for a group called Comfort Keepers for a little bit, and was one of those direct support professionals in a way, I think that number one, we need to increase the wages for those working with our vulnerable populations. We need to support that with public dollars. And we also need to encourage family members to take training and become formal caretakers as well.
Okay, what steps will you take to reduce the risk crimes committed against people with disabilities?
So in my experience, I have seen several crimes of people with disabilities. There's two, you know, one of the biggest crimes is people coming in to help people out, and they end up financially taking control of their money. And so I think that when we have organizations who provide employees to help with their client base, I think there needs to be some strict background checks on the people. I think there needs to be training on that. And on the flip side, I think that we really need to educate our population of the disabled, and especially autistic individuals, of the warning signs of people taking advantage of them. And you know, I personally am very passionate about this, because I have had a man come into my life through working with Comfort Keepers. I was working with his aunt. His aunt passed away, and my husband and I took him under our wing. He was living in his parents' house that had been left to him, and he literally had been working for 20 years as a janitor. And when the couple sold the company, he no longer had somebody looking out for him, and someone actually talked him into giving this person thousands of dollars, so he lost all of his money, and he was basically a squatter in his parents' house. So there definitely needs to be some services, and we need to have background checks for anyone who is going to be working with or taking care of people with disabilities.
Okay, what steps will you take to ensure that the education system in Pennsylvania meets the needs of all children, especially those with disabilities?
So this is something that I actually am very passionate about, because sitting on a school board, I have seen firsthand the absolutely outstanding job that Boyertown School District has done with our population of intellectually and physically disabled students in our school district. And we have a program called the BEST program. And we take our life skills kiddos, and we have a funded program where we actually teach them life skills. And I would like to see that program expanded. Right now, we send them out into the workforce and they do jobs. They work at the local, the local flower shop and the local eatery. And we have someone who coordinates that. And of course, that takes money. It takes funding because you have to hire personnel. But these students get an opportunity to learn to be successful in the workforce. So I think that we should provide an opportunity. And I'm not big on state mandates, but I do think that this should be something that should be statewide, and no student should leave our high schools without the life skills necessary, if possible, to be able to live in an apartment by themselves. I know that my friend Stevie was never given that opportunity. I believe he graduated from Downingtown High School, and he was just kind of shoved in a special education class, never was able to have inclusion with his peers, and not only learn some educational skills, but also some social coping skills, because he was not able to be streamlined into the classroom. So I do think it is vital that whenever possible, that students with disabilities are able to be pushed into the regular ed classroom, whether they need to have an aide or whatever, and have an opportunity to be with those students. And something that I'm pushing at Boyertown High School is I would like to see we have a real big classroom that we took one classroom and made it into one big one. And I would like to see it transformed into a mini apartment. And of course, we know that always takes money and it takes funding. And I have been pushing our administration to find some money to get a washer and dryer and a bedroom setting and a bathroom, and so we can teach, and a kitchen, so we can teach our students how to take care of themselves. So I think if we can get that across the board, and I understand that a lot of this takes funding, and I think what we need to do, it's a shift in our priorities in funding. And I think that we need to start perhaps making this a priority, because in this small investment that we make now will pay off tenfold in the end. So that's kind of my position about education, is probably because I'm on a school board and I know some of these kids, and I know I have Stevie in my life. It's something that I really feel passionate about, because I really do believe that if he had had that opportunity in high school, he would not have had that rough patch.
Thank you. The next question says, what steps will you take to expand access to the general education classroom and achievements broad, include students with disabilities?
So I think my answer is similar. Again, to the first is, the most important thing is for children with disabilities to allow them to be in the classroom with students of mixed abilities. I think that's really important. And I think that if we need to provide additional paraprofessionals or additional learning support educators in those classrooms, that we should be doing that. I think that is a step that we can do. And again, I said earlier, probably kind of spoke to both of your questions, to expand programs like the BEST program, and not just continue to fall back on the FAPE laws and just come out with more innovative ways to make sure that when our students graduate from our high schools, that they have those skills. So one of the steps is obviously to push that and either find a funding source or encourage school boards to actually look at this and fund these programs and make them a priority in their education and in their school districts.
Okay, my last question is, what ways will you promote meaningful employment opportunities in your district for individuals with disabilities?
So again, I think that, during the school day, we should absolutely focus on life skills and employment preparation while those kiddos are in our schools. And for those who have already graduated, I would like to see us work with our local stores and our local, service providers, and work with them to provide paid employment opportunities. And I'd like to see that program expanded in Pennsylvania. I do know, working with Stevie, that there are some programs. For example, he worked with Community Health, and through Community Health, they got him connected with an organization where he worked as a greeter at Home Depot. I think that we need to see an expansion of those programs. I think those programs are so excellent because, not only does he now make his own money, but now he can afford to pay rent for his apartment, and he's learning to be independent. And again, I think I have said previously, Boyertown has the best program, and I would like to see an expansion of those programs, because that really is where we can make a huge difference in when we start in kindergarten, and when you go back and look at education. We also, on the other end, we need to expand these services, whether it's Head Start or pre-K or kindergarten, so we can start right from the get-go to address some of these issues, and then have them work all the way through their high school. And also, we do have a technical school, and I think that we need to identify those students earlier and be able to support them at our technical schools. Obviously, some of these folks are not going to be able, unless they're high functioning with some of their disabilities, they may not be able to go to college. I mean, certainly people with physical disabilities would be able to do that. But I do think that we need to provide accessibility for everyone, whether it's a physical disability or an intellectual disability. And I think by supporting programs like our Berks County Technical Schools, and providing resources and identifying those students so they can get a skill and go out into the workforce, I think that is something that we need to look at as well, and provide them some training so they can go out into the community and do these jobs. And I think that it's a partnership. We need to provide grants, and we need to provide incentives for some of these employers to want to hire some of these folks, so they can, we all benefit when we do that.
Thank you, Jill. That was the last of my questions.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, Jill and Bill, for today's Meet the Candidate series. You guys did a great job. Bill, thank you for all of those poignant questions. And Jill, we appreciate your comments. Just to let you know, Jill, that the ARC of Pennsylvania and the ARC Alliance is always here if you need us. If you have other questions related to intellectual developmental disability issues, you can feel free to reach out. But thank you again for taking time to join us today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. And